Hello everyone. Thank you all for watching the video and leaving such heartfelt comments. Wishing the whole family good health and peace. The next episode begins. On a typical morning, Lawyer Ha sat in his usual cafe, surrounded by piles of documents that CEO James had provided. He carefully flipped through each page, reviewing important information related to the lawsuit and the company's situation. The tension from the ongoing case was slowly building up inside him, and he knew that every decision made during this time would have a significant impact on James's future and the company. While he was focused on his work, Lawyer Ha suddenly heard the door to the cafe open. John, a cold and powerful-looking man, walked in. He walked straight to Lawyer Ha's table and sat down across from him. "You must be Lawyer Ha, the one handling the lawsuit for CEO James's company?" John began the conversation with a cold but confident tone. Lawyer Ha looked up, meeting John's gaze, and showed no signs of surprise. "Yes, I'm handling this case," Lawyer Ha replied briefly, continuing to look over the documents without changing his expression. John wasn't in a rush. He calmly took an ATM card out of his pocket, placed it on the table in front of Lawyer Ha, and continued speaking in a calm, detached manner. "I can offer you $500 million to make sure this case is lost. After the job is done, I will transfer the money to this account." There was a brief silence after John's offer, the space around them feeling still as the sound of coffee being brewed seemed to fade. Lawyer Ha glanced at the ATM card and could sense the temptation of the large sum of money. However, he didn't let himself be swayed by such an unethical proposal. He set the documents down, looked directly at John, and replied firmly, "I'm sorry, I've already taken on this case with my client, and I can't do that. It's a matter of ethics, and I won't compromise my integrity for money." John stayed silent for a moment, his eyes cold and determined, but he didn't give up. He kept the ATM card in front of Lawyer Ha, patient and unhurried. "Think about it carefully. This is an opportunity not everyone gets," John said before standing up and preparing to leave, leaving the ATM card on the table. The new day began for Diep with a cool and refreshing breeze that filled the morning air, bringing a sense of peace and tranquility. It was the perfect weather for a day on the farm. Diep had risen early, as she always did, eager to begin her work. She loved her farm and the time she spent in the banana grove, tending to the plants, ensuring the fruit grew well, and now it was time to harvest. The sun's soft rays filtered through the leaves of the banana trees, casting a warm golden hue over the land, creating an atmosphere that was both calming and energizing. Diep felt connected to the land and knew that today would be another productive day. She began her walk along the familiar path that wound through the banana grove, surrounded by the towering banana plants. The banana trees, with their tall trunks and thick green leaves, stood proudly as the fruits of their labor hung heavily from the branches. Some of the bunches were large and filled with perfectly ripe bananas, while others were still in their earlier stages of development. Diep had carefully tended to each of them, and now she was here to harvest the fruits of her hard work. As she walked through the grove, Diep paused in front of a tree that had been knocked over by the strong winds from the previous night's storm. The banana bunch it supported was now fully ripe, their skins a rich golden yellow, signaling their peak sweetness. Diep bent down, plucking one of the bananas from the bunch. She peeled it, and as she bit into it, the sweetness burst into her mouth. It was perfectly ripe, smooth, and delicious. She smiled with satisfaction, knowing that all the months of care and attention she had put into these banana trees had paid off. The bananas were sweet and perfectly ripened, and she thought to herself how wonderful they would be once she harvested more and sold them at the market. She imagined the smiles on people's faces when they bit into the ripe, golden bananas. Diep continued her work, focusing on the bananas that had reached the right stage for harvest. She walked carefully through the grove, her eyes scanning the trees for the right bunches. Some were green but not too young, showing signs that they were ready to be cut down. Diep carefully approached each bunch, her knife gleaming in the sunlight as she readied herself. She knew that the timing of the harvest was crucial, and it was important to harvest the bananas before they ripened too much on the tree. Holding the knife firmly in her hand, she made each cut with strength and precision. With a quick, decisive motion, she cut through the thick stalk that held the bunch of bananas, allowing them to fall gently into her waiting hands. The weight of each bunch was considerable, and Diep could feel the strain in her arms as she caught them. She worked quickly, making sure the bananas didn't bruise as they fell. With each bunch she harvested, she moved swiftly, placing them gently on the ground before moving to the next tree. As the day went on, Diep harvested dozens of bunches, each one carefully caught and set down with care. After she had harvested all the bananas she could, Diep began the task of separating them. She carefully peeled each bunch apart, creating smaller clusters or nai as they were called. With her knife, she delicately cut the stalks that held the individual bananas together. Each banana was carefully checked for any imperfections, as Diep knew that any bruised or damaged bananas would not sell as well. She arranged each cluster neatly in her woven basket, making sure they were securely placed and not overcrowded. The weight of the fruit made the basket feel heavy on her back, but she didn't mind. The satisfaction of seeing her hard work bear fruit made it all worthwhile. Once all the bananas were carefully packed into the basket, Diep secured the opening with rope, making sure the fruit wouldn't fall out as she made her way back home. She adjusted the basket on her back and began her journey down the slope toward her house. Each step was steady, her feet moving with the rhythm of the land. The walk back home always gave her time to reflect on the day's work and the satisfaction that came with knowing the bananas would soon ripen and be sold at the market. When Diep finally reached her home, she carefully set the basket down. The cool afternoon air greeted her as she unwrapped the rope from the basket, releasing the fresh bananas. Diep took a deep breath, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over her. She moved toward the storage area she had prepared for the bananas. She lined the bottom of a box with a soft cloth, placing each cluster of bananas inside with care. The cloth would help protect the bananas and keep them from being bruised. She arranged the bananas carefully in the box, ensuring that each bunch was evenly spaced. Some of the bananas were almost fully ripe, so Diep decided to hang those up to finish ripening. She carefully strung the clusters up on a hook in the rafters of her house. The bananas would ripen slowly over the next few days, turning a rich yellow and becoming even sweeter. Diep smiled as she looked at the bananas, knowing that the hard work of the harvest was worth it. Soon they would be ready to sell or enjoy with her family. At the same time, James arranged a private meeting with his younger brother. They met at a secluded spot along a mountain pass, where an open patch of land overlooked the vast, breathtaking forest below. The view was awe-inspiring, but the air between the two was filled with tension as they prepared to discuss something important. When his brother arrived, James wasted no time in speaking. "I wanted to get away from the office, change the scenery for a bit," James said, his voice calm but carrying an edge. "I've taken care of John. I have the proof, the video of him confessing to everything he's done. If we bring this to the authorities, he'll be in prison for years." His brother looked at him with surprise, unsure of how to respond, but James continued, his eyes focused on the horizon. "However," James paused, the weight of his words hanging in the air, "I'm giving John a chance. You see, I don't know if it's possible, but I think our father may have hurt John's family in the past. Maybe that's why he harbors such irrational hatred toward me. If that's the case, I want to make it right. I want to give him a chance to redeem himself." His brother looked confused but nodded slowly, processing the gravity of the situation. "You want me to talk to Dad? Find out if there's any truth to this?" James nodded firmly. "Yes. You need to confirm what really happened. I can't do it alone. Meanwhile, I'm going to meet John. We need to settle this once and for all." The scene shifted to the local cafe where John was waiting. As soon as John saw James, his face twisted in disbelief. "I can't believe it," John sneered. "I thought you were still sick. Did you fool me, or was this all part of your plan? But don't think for a second that you've won. You're still going to prison." Without saying a word, James calmly pulled out his phone and played the damning video, the one where John, in a moment of weakness, confessed his wrongdoings during a visit to the hospital. John's face drained of color as the truth hit him. "You're a traitor," John stammered, his voice trembling with rage. "You're not who I thought you were." James, unwavering, replied, "I'm nothing compared to you. Do you realize what your personal grudge has done? You've affected innocent people, farmers who've lost their jobs, people on the brink of starvation. But I'm offering you a way out." James stepped closer to the table, his gaze intense. "Here's the deal. If you reinvest in the project and convince the shareholders to come back, I'll erase all this. No evidence, no consequences. But if you refuse, I will make sure the whole world knows what you've done." John's face twisted with hatred. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I'll let you have this one, James. You've played your cards, but don't get too comfortable." "I'll be back," John said with a dangerous, venomous tone. "I'll find my own way to get back at you." John watched James leave, his anger simmering just below the surface. He clenched his fists and in his mind, he already began plotting his next move. "All right, you want to play that game? Fine. But mark my words, I'll find the evidence to destroy you. I'll play you like you've never been played before." After harvesting the bananas and letting them ripen, Diep headed out towards the local store. She carefully selected a few packs of pastries to bring as a gift for her mother. With the small bags in her hands, she made her way to her mother's house. As she entered, she saw her mother sitting by the kitchen stove, the warm glow from the fire illuminating her face. Diep smiled softly and greeted her. "Hi, Mom." Her mother looked up, her face lighting up with recognition. She motioned for Diep to sit beside her. The fire crackled, and the scent of wood filled the air, creating a peaceful atmosphere. The two of them sat in silence for a while, enjoying each other's presence. Then her mother spoke softly. "You should come back home, Diep. It's been so long since you've been here with me. I miss having you around." Diep's smile faded slightly as she shook her head. "I promised James that I would stay and take care of the farm," she replied. "If I leave now, there will be no one to look after it." Her voice was calm, but there was a quiet sense of responsibility behind her words. She opened one of the pastry packs and offered it to her mother. "Try this, Mom. It's soft and will be easy to eat," Diep said, handing her a piece. Her mother took the pastry with a gentle smile, the softness of the moment deepening. As they ate, Diep reached over and took her mother's hand. Their fingers intertwined, and for a moment, they both sat quietly, feeling the weight of the world around them. It wasn't just the farm or the responsibilities. It was the shared understanding of being women, of caring for others while also needing care themselves. The bond between them was unspoken but profound. Both women, in their own way, understood the struggles they faced, and in that brief moment of silence, they found comfort in each other's company. As James walked out of the cafe, the weight of the situation hung heavily in the air. He knew that what he had just done, giving John a second chance, might come back to haunt him. But James wasn't afraid. He understood the game they were playing, and he knew how to control the board. James finished his work for the day and thought to himself, "Today I'm going to surprise Diep. What should I do? I'll cook her a delicious meal." With that thought, he decided to head to the market to buy the ingredients he needed, determined to make this a special occasion. When he arrived at Diep's house, he was relieved to find that no one was home. This would be the perfect opportunity to do something kind for her. Without wasting time, James started his work in the kitchen. He lit the stove and prepared to cook. First, he went to the storage and grabbed the rice. He poured it into a pot, took it to the sink and rinsed it thoroughly, draining the water before bringing it back to the stove. While the rice sat in the pot, he stood by the stove, holding his hands near the warm, glowing flames to warm them. It was a small, comforting moment as the heat from the fire spread through his fingers. As the rice began to boil, James grabbed a pair of chopsticks and stirred the grains, making sure they wouldn't stick to the bottom and burn. The sound of the water bubbling was reassuring, and as the water level started to lower, he carefully placed the pot back onto the stove, covering it with hot coals to cook the rice evenly. Now that the rice was being cooked, James turned his attention to the main dish. He decided on a hearty bone soup. He rinsed the pork bones thoroughly, removing any excess dirt. He then grabbed the potatoes and carrots, peeled them, and washed them carefully before setting them aside. He reached into the cupboard and grabbed a bottle of cooking oil, pouring a little into a pot, and heating it up. The oil began to sizzle, and the smell of fried garlic soon filled the air. James added the bones to the pot, stirring them to brown the meat slightly and release the flavors. After a few minutes, he added water to the pot to begin simmering the bones. Once the broth was ready, he carefully chopped the potatoes and carrots into bite-sized pieces, ready to be added to the pot once the bones had softened. James knew the process was a bit slow, but the smell of the broth bubbling on the stove made him excited. He could already imagine how good this meal would taste. James was a busy CEO with little time to cook, but today he was determined to make a meal Diep would enjoy. Cooking with care for her was an expression of his feelings, something simple but meaningful. As the soup simmered, the thought of Diep's smile made him even more determined to make the meal as perfect as possible. This will be delicious and Diep will be so happy, he thought with a smile, looking forward to surprising her with this gesture of love. Diep walked back home after a long day, only to be greeted by the smell of smoke wafting from the kitchen. Surprised, she couldn't figure out who could be cooking at this hour. As she stepped into the kitchen, she was taken aback to see James standing at the stove, carefully preparing a meal. Her eyes widened in surprise and she asked, "What are you doing here?" James turned to her, a smile on his face. "Don't worry about it. Just go ahead and do something for a bit. I'll be done soon," he added, his tone warm and inviting. Still in a bit of disbelief, Diep nodded and walked outside into the garden. She decided to gather some weeds, letting her mind wander as she worked. The peacefulness of the evening and the familiar routine of caring for the garden helped her relax, but there was still a lingering sense of surprise that James had gone through so much effort just to cook for her. After a short while, James walked outside, joining Diep in the garden. The moment he stepped outside, Diep could feel the warmth of his presence. They both sat down, and the conversation naturally turned to matters of the heart. James started with a deep sigh. "I'm sorry, Diep," he said softly, his voice sincere. "I know I've been distant, and things have been chaotic lately. I've been so caught up in work and there's been so much going on, especially with John. I didn't mean to deceive you about being sick, but it was part of the plan to deal with him. Now everything is handled. I believe what I did was the right approach, and it will all work out in the end." Diep listened quietly, her eyes searching his face. She could sense the weight he carried and the toll it had taken on him. She placed her hand on his, feeling a sense of connection as she responded, "I understand, James. It's been a tough time for both of us. But I'm glad everything is finally resolved." They both stood up and walked inside where the table was set. Together they said a prayer before their meal, thanking God for watching over them and bringing them to this moment. The warmth between them was palpable, a quiet understanding of the struggles they had both faced. After finishing their meal, they cleaned up together, the sound of dishes being washed and the soft clink of silverware filling the air. As they finished cleaning, James took Diep's hand in his fingers gently intertwined with hers. "How's your studying going?" he asked, his voice gentle, his gaze soft as he looked at her. Diep smiled, feeling a surge of warmth in her chest. "It's going well," she replied. "I'm making progress." She paused before adding, "And I understand the pressure you've been under, James. It's not easy for either of us." They stood there for a moment, holding hands, both of them seeking comfort in each other's presence. James then shared his upcoming plans, his excitement about expanding his business, opening new offices, and starting an online store. As he spoke about the future, his enthusiasm filled the air, and Diep couldn't help but smile at his optimism. Suddenly, a knock on the door broke the peaceful moment. It was Mr. Tu Diepp's father. He stepped inside, and with a serious expression he turned to Diep. "You should stop seeing James," he said, his voice firm. "That man isn't good for you." Diep's heart sank, and she looked at him in confusion. "Why are you saying that, Dad?" she asked, her voice tinged with worry. Mr. Tu glanced around before speaking again. His voice lowered. "Do you know why James's father had to leave the country? He's going back soon, and it's not for good reasons."
Tập quán ăn uống, người dân vùng núi thường có những món ăn truyền thống như cơm lam, cơm nếp, xôi lép, thịt nướng. Tập quán ở người dân vùng núi thường sống ở trong những ngôi nhà truyền thống như nhà sàn của người Tày, nhà rông của người Mông. Những phong tục tập quán này đã được bảo tồn và phát triển qua nhiều thế hệ, tạo nên bản sắc văn hóa đa dạng và phong tục phong phú của các dân tộc người thiểu số ở vùng núi. Dân tộc thiểu số là những nhóm dân tộc có một số lượng rất là ít so với dân tộc đa số trong một số quốc gia và vùng lãnh thổ. Tại Việt Nam có 54 dân tộc thiểu số, chiếm khoảng 15% tổng dân số của Việt Nam. Một số dân tộc thiểu số tại Việt Nam bao gồm như người Tày, sinh sống chủ yếu tại các tỉnh phía Bắc, Lạng Sơn, Cao Bằng, Bắc Kạn. Người Thái sinh sống chủ yếu ở các tỉnh phía Bắc như Sơn La, Điện Biên, Lai Châu. Người Mông sinh sống chủ yếu tại các tỉnh phía Tây Bắc như Hà Giang, Lào Cai, Yên Bái.